moderator of the program. And one of the things that I've learned as an urban planner and developer for over 25 years is that you really have to understand the context of how our neighborhoods have come together, our communities come together. Think about the great migration from the south to the north, why St. Louis was pivotal in its many ways. And being here in St. Louis for the past 21 years, I had to learn about St. Louis history. But one thing about history that we all know is that we need to learn it, we need to understand it, and we need to commit to a better future. Sometimes history is not comfortable. It can be very stressful. We all live through trauma, through family, through community, and through our history as people. You won't find too many groups of people outside of the Black community that have had more struggle over the past couple of hundred years than the Black community. So again, to help us kind of filter through some of that with some self-care tips, I am going to ask Ms. Keely Feeney to come up and give us a little bit of information about how we can better serve ourselves. But before she does that, I do want to ask a question before we set the context of our history. You see this scale here. If I ask you the question, how well do you know Black St. Louis history? Would you say that you are extremely knowledgeable, very knowledgeable, moderately knowledgeable, slightly knowledgeable, or not knowledgeable at all? Now, you don't have to raise your hands, but just table it in your mind, because we are on a spectrum of growth and development individually and collectively. Amen? Iron sharpens iron. But I would tell you, listening to these kids today and looking at our elders who are here today, it is up to my generation to serve as that bridge, to make sure that your history remains our history to the next generation. So we're going to do that. And so again, just table this, we'll come back to it. But our objective for today is simple. We want to recognize, we want to celebrate, and we want to educate people of all colors. And I'm happy to see that we do have a mix of people who are not Black, but who have felt safe to come and be a part of our learning experience. So thank you very much. This is today's lineup. I'll be very transparent. Sometimes I serve as an adjunct professor, so I like to be very transparent about where the breaks are going to be and kind of what the flow of the day is going to be, which is why I really wanted to start on time. But nonetheless, we are here where we are, and we're going to move forward. So we're going to have Ms. Keely Feeney come up in just a moment, but then we're going to have Reflections of Black St. Louis History by Dr. Boyd. We're going to have Inspiration of Black History by St. Louis Artworks. Again, we have Stasia Curry back here, and Tyler Harris. They're very quiet, but a work of art is being produced. We're going to have our speaker, Robin Prouty, Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved Incorporated. We're also going to have a short theatrical performance by representatives from the Black Rep. Then we will have our lunch break over some good music, and we hope that you will stay here and fellowship on this Saturday morning going into the afternoon. We're going to have a little gift for some of you from the Griot Museum as a gift. Then we're going to have our panel conversation, which will be very much your time to engage. So it won't be just hearing, it's going to be engagement. That's how we grow, by listening, by speaking, and just sharing the experience. And then we're going to have Pastor Derek L. Perkins Sr. come back and give us some closing remarks as well as call to action. So at this time, I'm going to ask our expert, our licensed clinical social worker, who's licensed in both Illinois and Missouri, to come up and share some tools that we can use going forward.
I'm a little short. Good morning. Now, I don't know about that expert part, but I have lived experience and a little bit of education. Good morning. I came here with an idea of what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, and I don't know how many of you were in that last around, but Mr. Lil Miles, he blessed my soul. But not only did he bless my soul, he triggered me. So I'm gonna tell you a little backstory to that song, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. I haven't heard that song in 33 years. My grandmother passed when I was 14, and my father and his siblings sung that song. So it triggered me, as beautiful as it was. And I said, Lord, you funny, because you bring me up here to talk about triggers and how to be well mentally, and I'm triggered when I walk in the door. So, and then I looked up the song, because I was like, okay, it's something to this. So, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot is a code about the desire to be free, right? So I'm here to talk to you about being free in your mind. So how appropriate is that? So I'm not gonna be before you long, but I'm gonna give you a few tips. If you're gonna master the art of being free and self-care, you have to be mentally well. So I'm gonna ask you all to interact with me a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask you to interact with me a little bit. So when you hear mental health, what do you think about? Just a couple of people just speak out. Mental wellness. A lot of times we mistake mental health for mental illness. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to be mentally well. And the topic is how to win in mental health. So I'm going to talk about emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. So I'll give you a few tips on that. And then I have my colleague, Sonia Chase. She's also a LCSW. She's going to come up and do a breathing exercise with you all. Is that okay? So I know we're a little behind, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. So emotionally, if you want to win in mental health, first off, you have to acknowledge that you need help. We cannot change what we haven't acknowledged. So acknowledging that we need help. The mind is the center. It's the center of everything. So the enemy attacks us in our mind first, and that takes away of everything else. So acknowledging that we need that help. And knowing that it's okay not to be okay. So when you think about that, a lot of times we don't want to reach out for help. We don't want to get a therapist or a counselor, but we need it sometimes. We can't do it by ourselves. God sends us helpers, and it's okay to reach out. Self-evaluate daily. If we're not evaluating ourselves, we can see everything wrong in everybody else, but we need to self-evaluate so we can continue to work on ourselves. Stop holding on to our pain and our trauma like it's a gift. We don't want to get rid of it. We want to talk about it and keep it and hold it like it's a gift, but it's not. It's hindering every aspect of our lives. So get rid of it. Let it go. And it's not as easy as letting it go. Again, that comes with that help, that prayer, someone to help you process through that, because sometimes it's not just easy to let it go. Learn how to manage your emotions through self-awareness. If we're aware of ourselves and what's hindering us, we can learn how to manage those emotions, because we can't control them. We're going to have emotions. We have emotions, but learning how to manage those emotions and learning to extend grace. So the topic today is unity. In order for us to have unity, we have to extend ourselves grace and other people grace, right? So that's the emotional part of it. Any questions, any input on that part? Okay, I'm gonna go on to the physical. So being mindful of our bodies and what it needs to be healthy, properly, exercising and eating right is very important. Exercising on purpose, because sometimes we say we're gonna exercise and we don't ever get to it. I'm guilty of that. Getting rest. God says that we need to get rest. You know, knowing that we need that rest. It's okay to pause. Pausing is very important. We don't pause a lot. We just keep going. But we must pause. You know, I think about COVID, and we had to pause. But as soon as we were free to get out, what we do? We went back to that same rushed life. So being able to pause and take a self-evaluation again and know that we have to reset sometimes. Being consistent with doctor's appointments and our medications to be well. Again, sometimes we just neglect those things. And whatever's going on, if we don't do what we need to do there, it becomes worse. And if we're not okay physically, we're not okay mentally. So it all works hand in hand. And staying connected with positive people. Our peace is priceless. So if we have a lot of negativity coming in or a lot of negativity around us, we're not gonna be well. Now I get to the spiritual part. Stress less and pray more. Therapy is a strategy and prayer is your weapon. So we need both. You know, we need both. Feed your spirit with the word of God. Be anxious for nothing, use wisdom, anger, but sin not. It's a lot of things in the Bible. That's the foundation for everything. Be careful of what you're allowing in your spirit, and it goes back to the negative people. But also the news, what we listen to, what we're putting in our spirit, it matters. What's in is gonna come out. Activate your faith. So I have a question. How many of you all looked under your pews to see if it was screws in the bottom of the pews and that it was gonna hold you before you sat on it? Nobody, right? So you have faith in that pew. We need to have faith in God like that. You just sit down. We even walk on this ground like it's just, we know we're not gonna fall through. And we don't question it. And we can't see the screws, but we know they're there. Same thing with God. We have to have faith. We have to activate our faith. If not, in the world today and all the things that's going on, it's gonna be hard to make it. We're not gonna make it. And tell your story, but use wisdom with telling it. We all have a testimony. We all have something to share. And we all need to release it, but release it with wisdom. So share your story. And I'm going to give you a few little tips to hold on to, and then I'm going to call Miss Sonia up to do a breathing exercise with you. We have handouts in the back, some resources if you want to get connected to any mental health services or supportive services. See First Lady Bridget in the back. So balance is important. Never pass up a perfect opportunity to be silent. We don't have to respond to everything. Remember, our minds can be our best friends or our greatest enemies. The healthier we are mentally, the more powerful we are spiritually. Quiet the voices and stop listening to the lies of the enemy. And remember the promises of God. Know your position and get out of your own way. And if you missed any of that, see me. I have a handout where all of that is written down, and you'll be able to see what we talked about. And I can also talk with you too. Okay, so I'm gonna call Miss Sonia. Hold on, you have a question? So let's talk about that. We do have, so we have a list of we have some resources in the back. There are telephone numbers on there that you can call. There's also a number 988 that you can also call if you're ever in an emergency, and they will respond promptly. But it's important that we do have those resources and that we do reach out. And if you need any resources, like I said, we have information in the back. You can call us. Even if it's something that we don't provide, we will make sure you get connected. It's not just I'm going to give you a number and send you right away. We're going to connect you and do a warm hand transfer, because it's difficult when you're in a state of emergency and you need someone to help you and you're just giving numbers to just go. So for sure, if you need that information, we're in the back. I know we're going to talk about some sensitive subjects today, so if you're triggered or anything comes through, hopefully you can use this breathing exercise, and if not, we'll still be in the building. So if you need to talk, we'll be there for that as well. Okay. Ms. Sonia.
Good morning. Okay. It's not really my area, but I'm gonna do my thing. All right, so as Ms. Keeley said, I am one of the behavioral health workers here with her. I work with her agency. There's so much going on when we're talking about mental health and some of the things that we experience as a people, individually, within our families, at our jobs. I mean, it's very rarely in our lives that we move through it that there's not stress involved in it, okay? There are different types of breathing exercises that I want to talk to you about, and I'm always looking for new ways of stress management, okay? So, of course, everyone knows about deep breathing, where you inhale on the count of 4, you hold for the count of 4, and then you exhale at the count of 6. Does anyone use that exercise at all? Nobody? Oh, we got one person that does that. Okay, so that's pretty common for a lot of people, like I said, but I'm always looking for something new that that kind of challenges. There's also progressive muscle relaxation. Has anyone ever heard of that exercise? Again, you just be doing the thing, don't you? Okay, awesome. Okay, so in my search for always trying to find something new, this is the exercise that I just recently discovered, and I find it's really, really helpful. I wouldn't recommend you're doing it in public, or if you might come across something that kind of stresses you out, but this is something that you want to practice when you're at home or when you have a time when you're down. So I just want you guys to kind of participate with me. Is everybody in agreement with that? It won't take long and it won't hurt. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just kind of put your phones down for a minute. Everybody put your phone down. Okay, just get as comfortable as you can in your seat where you're sitting. Okay, now, this is called VOO breathing, all right? V-O-O breathing, okay? And what it does is it triggers the parasympathetic part of your brain. So I'm not even getting ready to get technical. The sympathetic part, which is the fight or flight, everybody knows about that. When you get in an anxious situation, your heart gets racing, your breathing gets funny, some people sweat profusely, your head starts getting light, right? That activates your response of either there's going to be a fight, I need to run, or whatever it is to get you out of this perceived danger. The parasympathetic, which is the relax and digest response, that's the body's response to kind of bring you down the center. So the VOO breathing actually triggers your parasympathetic side, the relaxed state of the breathing aspect. So if you sit still, just kind of get as relaxed as you possibly can, okay? Now this breathing, I don't want you to breathe in your chest. When we're born in the world, we breathe through our stomach, means our stomach contract, and then, you know, it inhales and it goes in and out. I'm not even taking, I'm a little nervous, okay, just work with me. So when you're doing the VOO breathing, you're gonna breathe in and your stomach is gonna fill with oxygen as opposed to you holding it in your chest, right? So you breathe in, you hold it at the count of 4. And when you breathe out, I want you to make the sound VOO to the point where you're feeling the vibration. Everybody ready? Everybody ready? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, remember, you're holding the oxygen in your stomach. Breath is everything. Without breath, we're going to die. So we know if we use our breath the right way, it's going to make a difference, okay? So everybody, just get as relaxed as you possibly can and just inhale and put the air in your stomach. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, breathe out with VOO. I need you to breathe out, okay? Ready to try it again? All right, just relax. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Now push out with VOO. Okay, one more time. Inhale. Now push out. Do you feel it in your chest? Now, this is going to take practice. The more you push out making that fog sound is the more your body is going to vibrate, okay? And that's the goal of this exercise because it's supposed to resonate in your chest. It resonates down inside your stomach, okay? And it helps release the stress that you're dealing with, all right? A lot of the breathing exercises is important that you practice. It's not anything you're going to sit with me for 2 minutes and you're going to get it and run because you got to train your body how to move the oxygen inside. Okay, are there any questions on this at all? So the handout that I have and that they've given out, it walks you through the 3 different types of exercises, breathing exercises that I just talked about. It talks about the regular breathing, the inhale 4, the hold 4, and the exhale 6. It talks about the deep muscle relaxation starting from the bottom of your feet, working all the way up to the top of your head. And it also walks you through the VOO breathing, which is very important when you're learning how to manage your stressors, okay? Again, if there's any time that you want to reach out to a mental health professional, we are here. If you're not interested with our organization, as Ms. Keeley said, we can make connections to somebody that will be able to connect you with the services that you need, all right? I'm sorry? Yes, I thought they gave it out. Okay. Okay, so she has some right there, all right? All right, so please, guys, take care of yourself. We're living in some really, really chaotic times right now, and it's really, really easy for us to get triggers, and it doesn't really take much. All right, thank you very much for your time. Okay.
Thank you very much. Can we all say resources? Resources. I think that's what I heard from my great brother, Pastor Perkins, bringing those resources to our community. All right, I'm going to introduce our next speaker and presenter, who's our featured presenter. a good friend of mine, great fraternity brother of mine, Brother Dr. Miller W. Boyd III, who is a historian. I want to make sure that's clear. He is a historian. And in fact, he received his BA in sociology from Xavier University of Louisiana, that great HBCU institution. I think somebody's wearing a green sweatshirt over there. Great university. But then he went on to do some career work, and then decided he was going back to graduate school, so went to Boston University to get his master's in African American Black Studies. And then he went on to get his doctorate. And of all places, where did he go? They call it Ole Miss. And I won't get into why they call it Ole Miss, but it is the University of Mississippi. So if you're going to learn black history and learn the history of this nation, what other university would you go to? But he's a teacher here in the St. Louis region. He is a writer of many articles, but he is a great presenter and somebody, when we thought about putting this together, we knew he had to be on the lineup. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Brother Dr. Miller Boyd to come forward and take us through this journey of black history of St. Louis.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
I want to apologize to the First Lady, Brother Perkins, to Miss Bridget. She told me, she gave me an assignment, and I forgot. So I'm going to come back. If you have not registered outside to the left, there's a registration desk. We ask every individual, including our presenters, to make sure that you register, because we do want to document you being here. And it's also good for our other partners just to know who was here. And we can continue to make sure that we are developing those resources and leveraging those opportunities in the future as well. So thank you, Brother Boyd.
Okay. Good morning once again. Good morning. Very happy to be with you today. Before I start, I want to acknowledge a person who is no longer with us and want to dedicate this short lecture to him. Reverend Dr. John Wesley Hayward was an amazing preacher, scholar, alpha man, who passed away on Thanksgiving Day. I spoke to him many times about life in the South during the Civil Rights era, and he often told stories of his friend Martin Luther King. He just simply called him Martin. Dr. Hayward was an amazing alpha man whose presence is sorely missed, so I dedicate this to him. First of all, I'd like to thank Brother Derek Perkins and First Lady Bridget Perkins for inviting us into this church. Also want to especially thank Brother Brian Hurd and the greatest fraternity in the world, Alpha Phi Alpha, especially the Epsilon Lambda chapter. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the history of African American St. Louis. And St. Louis has gone by many names throughout its more than 250-year history. It's been called the Gateway to the West, Mound City, the broken heart of America, the tragic and the triumphant, the beautiful and unspeakable, the remarkable and the perfect, the legendary and forgotten. I call it home. Beautiful and imperfect. And its story is a story of tragedy, of triumph, trauma, and resilience. And it's a story that all of us here are helping to write at this very moment in time. Now, Missouri's African-American history stretches back 300 years, beginning when the French explorer Philippe Francois Renaud brought almost 500 enslaved Africans from the island of Saint-Domingue, what we call now present-day Haiti, to work in the territory's lead mines in 1720, a little bit south of St. Louis. Slavery would be in place in Missouri for almost 45 years before Auguste Chouteau founded St. Louis in 1764. And as we know, with French settlers came slavery. And as such, people of African descent, along with Native Americans who, by the way, had lived here for generations. If you don't know, the largest Native American city north of Mexico is right across the river in Cahokia. Africans, Native Americans, they worked as forced laborers, working in a variety of capacities: agricultural laborers, blacksmiths, cooks, personal servants, in this small burgeoning village on the banks of the Mississippi River. Now, slavery at this time under the French is going to be a little bit different than it would be under the Americans, guided by what was called the Code Noir. The rules of French slavery provided some legal protections for enslaved people. And under French law, and later the Spanish who come in 1770, some enslaved people were actually able to purchase and obtain their own freedom. While slavery was different under the French and Spanish, slavery was still oppressive. Slavery was still wrong. But black life in colonial St. Louis was not completely defined by slavery. There were a few people of African descent who were able to navigate the precarious space between slavery and freedom during the French and Spanish colonial periods. One, Jeanette Forchet, was a former slave living in French Illinois country, came to St. Louis in 1765, a year after the city was founded. She is going to be, this black woman will be one of the first landholders in St. Louis, obtaining a plot of land from city founder Pierre Laclede, and as a part of a small, free black community, she and her family eked out a living in a variety of ways, such as farming, hunting, doing laundry, practicing folk medicine, boarding other free black laborers. She was married twice, and both of her husbands were both skilled laborers, giving them more access to resources than other black St. Louisans in the 1700s. We know that she did a little bit better because we actually have documents linked to Jeanette Forchet. What we see on the right is actually an inventory of her possessions after the death of her second husband, Valentine, in 1790. Her daughter will marry a man by the name of Antoine Labadie. You all have heard of the street Labadie, right? It's named after a black man who was a butcher. And they will become one of the wealthiest black couples in all of St. Louis. But entering into the 1800s, African Americans made up nearly 20% of St. Louis's population. Most of them were enslaved. Yet after the United States purchased the Louisiana Territory in 1803, life became more complicated for African Americans. Slavery became more vital to Missouri after the creation of the cotton gin, enticing planters from Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, the Old South as they used to call it, to move their operations westward. And as a result, even the most enterprising free African Americans had difficulty controlling their lives, let alone achieving a measure of financial and social security. The profitability of slavery at that time, with the area that we call it the West, led to political discussions about the balance between slave and free states in America. This, of course, will lead to what was known as the Missouri Compromise. This basically ensured slavery would remain legal in perpetuity, possibly, in Missouri. But it also establishes this custom of when the nation expanded, brought new states into the Union, that there would be one slave state for every free state. This also marks the point where we start to go on this 40-year downward spiral towards civil war. Now, the Missouri Compromise was followed by other measures that restricted black life in St. Louis. In 1847, fearing that education could lead to rebellion, these ideas getting in the minds of these black people, right? Missouri legislators actually made it illegal to teach blacks how to read. Free blacks had to purchase licenses, like an insurance policy, to actually live in the city of St. Louis or to live in Missouri. These were called free Negro bonds. But because freedom is the natural and normal condition of all human beings, blacks did not passively accept their degraded position. They fought back. We know that African Americans escaped to free states. We know that they circumvented bans on literacy, reading in secret, even like John Meacham Barry, who took a riverboat out into the middle of the Mississippi River and held school, and when it was done, rowed people back to the shore. We also had people like Celia, the slave, who actually physically fought back against her master, killing him. But we also use the law to our advantage. As some of us are aware, Missouri allowed enslaved people to sue for their freedom based on technicalities in the law. These were called freedom suits, and we have a freedom suit memorial down behind the Civil Courts building. Really important aspect of our history. If you get a chance, you've got to go see this in person. So a freedom suit, if a person had evidence of prior freedom, they could be emancipated. If their mother was actually free when they were born, they could be emancipated. In probably the most famous freedom suit, Dred Scott sued because his owner had taken him into an area where slavery was actually illegal. Unfortunately, Dred Scott did not win his case. He gets his freedom later, but others successfully sued for their freedom, like Lucy Delaney. Lucy Delaney and her mother Polly were able to sue for their freedom. And from 1807 to 1865, more than 300 freedom suits were filed in St. Louis. By the eve of the Civil War, Missouri's population had jumped considerably. And although they only constituted 10% of the state's population in 1860, there were more people of African descent living in Missouri than ever before. Of the nearly 115,000 black people enumerated for the 1860 census in Missouri, 97% of them were enslaved. 97%. The remaining 3%, about 30,572 in all, free black population was tiny. And the majority of the free blacks lived here in St. Louis. The Civil War will change everything. The economic system that had become the foundation of the American economy will be destroyed. The Union's evolving position on whether our nation could remain half slave and half free opened new doors to freedom in St. Louis. And by far the most celebrated avenue for black freedom during the Civil War was military service. And more than 8,000 African Americans served in the Union Army, securing victory not only for the United States, but for those who remained in bondage. And some of those soldiers, if you know anything about black military Civil War history, some of these soldiers are going to be the founders of Lincoln University. A small note that a lot of people don't know, according to official records, men from the 62nd United States Colored Troop, based out of Missouri, fought in the last battle of the Civil War, firing the last shots according to official military records. Nonetheless, emancipation comes, but it doesn't make things perfect for blacks in St. Louis. Many struggled in freedom. But emancipation did give our people autonomy and a chance to forge their own destinies. While many people were sadly thrust into poverty, there were some who thrived and actually achieved a measure of financial success. A sizable percentage of what Cyprian Clay Morgan called the colored aristocracy were barbers, which was one of the most lucrative professions for black men in the 19th century. One of the most noted, for example, was this guy here, Robert J. Wilkinson. He owned this establishment at this famous, prestigious hotel downtown called the Planter's House. Of course, it no longer exists. But in 1858, he was worth about $600,000 in today's money. But he was by far not the wealthiest black St. Louisan in the 19th century. A woman by the name of Pelagie Rutgers. She made her money through real estate speculation. And in 1860, her net worth was about $500,000, which in today's money would be about $14.5 million. This is in the 19th century. But while these tales of black success are fascinating, they were not the norm. the condition of most African Americans lag behind others because of repressive racial policies and a lack of investment in black communities. So while you had enterprising businessmen and women, poor access to capital made it hard to create lasting and sustainable businesses that anchored large communities. And at the beginning of the 20th century, African American prosperity waxed and waned in St. Louis. Extreme poverty among African Americans continued to plague the region, but more success stories started to come into being. One of the most notable, of course, is that of Annie Turnbow Pope Malone, who we just know affectionately as Annie Malone. She was born in Metropolis, Illinois in 1902. I'm sorry, she comes to St. Louis in 1902, and she, like others, was concerned with notions of beauty. And she said that there were some certain problems. There was a demographic that was not being served, so she created her own products, hair straightening products, helping people to manage their own hair. She not only made money for herself, but she hired other black women to help other black women in the community. She became wealthy. And you know, sometimes we talk about, who do we call the first black millionaire? Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker worked for Annie Malone. Madam C.J. Walker was not the first black millionaire. Annie Malone was. Yes, yes, yes. Malone, of course, gave of her time. She created a cosmetology school called Poro College for black women. She gave of her time. She gave money to worthy causes. And one of those causes, of course, was the Colored Orphans Home, now known as the Annie Malone Children's Home. And of course, we celebrate her legacy with an annual parade given in her honor. Other enterprising African Americans skillfully navigated Jim Crow St. Louis in the early 20th century. African American entrepreneurs, invested in saloons. They invested in newspapers. They invested in funeral homes, and even in hotels, and even dancing schools. Didn't know people did that. But still, we needed some more financial resources. Because white financial institutions wouldn't serve us, we created our own. 1915, we have the creation of the first financial company run and owned by blacks, known as the New Age Building and Loan Association. Several years later, in 1922, we have what was known as the People's Finance Corporation, a really important institution here in Missouri. But still, white supremacy and racism put a strain on black life in St. Louis. Restrictive covenants, agreements made between a property owner and buyer to not sell to a particular racial or ethnic group became common in St. Louis after the city did something that no other city had done up until that point. And that was to vote in the affirmative for racial segregation in this city in 1917. This effectively, of course, reduces the housing options for African Americans and made this city more divided. Redlining also comes in. And we start to see that large swaths of the African American community will remain financially stagnant and impoverished. But of course, like before, we found a way out of no way. And in spite of segregation, two dynamic African American communities emerged in St. Louis in the early 20th century. The Ville and, what is it? Mill Creek. Mill Creek. Now, in the Ville, of course, we had Annie Malone's Poro College, which was a beautiful edifice. We had Homer G. Phillips Hospital. We had Sumner High School. These things anchored the community. We've already talked about Poro, but Homer G. Phillips Hospital was a transformative community institution. It's one of the few black hospitals in the country to accept black doctors into residency programs. And as a result, according to historian Dr. John Wright back there, who I often quote, one of the greats of St. Louis, nearly half of all black medical residents in the United States came to Homer G. Phillips to complete their medical training. Along with Homer G. Phillips, we have Sumner High School. If you did not know it already, Sumner is the first African-American high school west of the Mississippi. Founded in 1875, it became the first true institution for secondary school for African Americans. It's hard to imagine that options for high schools were limited, right? 1875 is not that long ago. Because of segregation, great scholars could not find jobs at elite white colleges. They instead came to Sumner. And as a result, we have the production of some of the most amazing people in Black St. Louis, or really even the nation. You've got your Congressman Lacy Clay, your Robert Guillaume, your Arthur Ashe, your Dick Gregory, your Chuck Berry, and of course, the lady herself, Tina Turner. But in another part of the city, we have Mill Creek. Mill Creek, yes. Mill Creek also developed into one of the epicenters of Black life in St. Louis. As wealthier whites moved away from downtown and more Blacks moved in during the Great Migration, after the First World War, African Americans moved in looking for decent housing. And by the late 1950s, more than 20,000 people called Mill Creek home. It contained a vibrant mix of about more than 800 African American businesses, churches, and other associations. And there, of course, was another great institution, Vashon High School. Now, many people will probably recognize this building as being a part of Harris Stowe. It was originally one of the buildings of Vashon High School. But, I forgot to say, if you're a Vashon grad, you had some amazing graduates. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, boxing champs Michael and Leon Spinks, the great jazz trumpeter Clark Terry, and one of the most important singers in American history, Donny Hathaway. This Christmas, that's him. And he's buried here in St. Louis, actually. Now, the decline of the Ville has been connected to desegregation and suburbanization, but Mill Creek was the victim of a failed urban renewal plan that demolished approximately 5,000 buildings and cleared almost close to 500 acres of real estate just east of Midtown, beginning in 1959. Now, with this picture, you probably see some buildings that are still standing. If you know where the Savas Center is, that was Mill Creek. So many people had to move, and that history was systematically erased. There is a monument down near the soccer stadium, but that doesn't make up for what was lost. Now, the city's perceived neglect of Mill Creek and its demolition of one of the shining lights of Black life in St. Louis added to the growing racial tensions both locally and nationally going into the 1960s. Though St. Louis was spared from the violent opposition to civil rights seen in places like Birmingham and Selma, the city was forced to reckon with its complicated racial history. As evidenced by Martin Luther King's visit a few months before the March on Washington in 1963, Blacks were actively fighting for racial and economic equality in St. Louis. And several months after Dr. King's visit, in August of '63, around the same time that we have the March on Washington, Black St. Louisans will start to picket Jefferson Bank and Trust after they refused to hire African Americans for anything other than custodial positions. They picketed for 7 months. And finally, Jefferson Bank relented in 1964, but for many people, that simply was not good enough. People need a reliable banking institution for the Black community, and a group of African Americans, including George Montgomery and others, decided to create Gateway Bank, which stood as another pillar in the African American community from 1965 until 2009. But despite the opportunities offered by Gateway Bank, African Americans still struggle to obtain social and economic security in St. Louis. Throughout the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, African Americans were routinely denied loans. They were given loans at higher interest rates. Barriers to financial stability stifled Black home ownership, Black businesses. But we do have other great stars that do emerge during this time, people who were actually able to make it. People that we do celebrate, like Donald Suggs, who was the majority owner of the St. Louis American. Benjamin Davis, who created the legendary McDonald's boat. If you didn't know, used to be, if you're not from St. Louis, this was a rite of passage for kids to go down on the riverfront and have lunch after visiting the art at the McDonald's boat. This was owned by a black man. You had people like Andy Seasoning, Reuben and Catherine Anderson, and of course you had people like David Stewart with Worldwide Technology. But as we have seen over the past 264 years, black success stories are great. But the movement for true equality under the law, for opportunity, is a never-ending campaign. We have to continuously assert our rights as citizens of this great and imperfect country. If we are going to secure for a better future for our families, for our children, we have to continue the fight. Peace, security, life, opportunity, happiness. These are our birthrights, and no one should keep us from our destinies. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life served as one of the many sources of inspiration for this current generation, and we do see that there is hope. New leaders have emerged out of the crucibles of the Michael Brown protest in Ferguson in 2014 and the unrest after the Jason Stockley verdict in 2017. But if we're to truly understand the fullness of Dr. King's message, we need to recognize that each one of us has a part to play in shaping the future. Everyone can make a difference. The work has to get done. I am reminded of the words of my late friend and fraternity brother, Dr. Frederick Phillips. He said these words while we were in college, and they have stuck with me for 30 years. He said, "You and I are the leaders we are seeking. You and I are the leaders we are seeking." Friends, I want to thank you for sharing part of your morning with us. Please, somehow, some way, go out into the world today and do good. Make this world a better place. Whether it's small or large, whether somebody sees it or not, we have to move closer to Dr. King's dream of getting to that mountaintop. Thank you so much.
Brother Boyd, you never disappoint. Never disappoint. So I hope you all believe me when I say we got a very nice presentation with some very deep knowledge. And I've heard him speak on numerous occasions, but it never amazes me the history of the St. Louis region and then also the messenger in which you share those words. You are a true teacher, my brother. Thank you. As we know, through this time of history, we will better understand our past. We'll realistically assess our present, and we will wholeheartedly commit to a more prosperous and peaceful future. Not to be political, but we also understand that we have an inauguration coming up for President of the United States. But I'm deeply honored to be here to make sure that all of you, and together collectively, we push forward in making sure that Brother King's legacy and all those in the civil rights struggle will never be forgotten. There are people who are trying to rewrite history. There is revisionist history, and there are people who are trying to eradicate our history. And if we do not have those like Brother Boyd and others passing along with Brother John Wright and many others, our history will be forgotten. So again, it's up to all of us to make sure that we keep the light of Brother King and our history at the forefront of our work. With that being said, I am going to now turn it over to our next presenter, who's going to show and share a little bit more of a topical approach of life experience. And I think we're going to all learn from her and her family about all of our legacies and what we need to do in terms of our own research within our families. So I'm going to ask Robin Prouty to come forward. She is the founder and executive director of Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved. She is a dear friend of mine I've known for a few years, and I'm so proud she served in our military in the United States Navy. She's also served in intelligence, so be careful, everybody. She can get the intel on you. But she's also served in the U.S. Department of Justice, which I believe probably opened her eyes about learning and making sure that people had fairness, equity, and just had the right to be who they are and to do what they needed to do in life. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our presenter to share a little bit about her family and what they have in terms of St. Louis.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brother Hurd. First of all, I want to thank you all again for staying, and I hope my presentation is as educational as Brother Boyd. I want to thank Pastor Perkins and the First Lady for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. I think it's very important. So I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Brother Boyd talked about. He gave us an overview of the history of St. Louis, and then I'm gonna bring it into a more personal story. And the reason why I think my family, because we're a very private family, but we decided to begin to start telling this story because, like he said, this is a climate where they're trying to rewrite history, erasure. So this is an act of resistance for my family to move forward in what we're doing. So again, my name is Robin Prouty. I'm the founder and executive director of the Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved. And this is my cousin. He is also a descendant and my protege. I'm bringing him along because I'm going to pass this baton because I'm ready to retire. But anyway, seriously though, I'm here. Our organization is a 501c3 organization, and we formed that organization in 2023 to advocate on behalf of our family. And so I'm going to start the slide presentation. All right. Oh, wait. Am I doing it? Oh, the arrow right there. Am I doing it right? I normally have. Oh, there. I'm sorry. See? It's okay. All right. So here are the key topics of my presentation today. I'm going to, so our acronym is DeSLU, which is the Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved. So I'm going to talk about who we are, how we came to be, what the research revealed, reclaiming narratives by telling our stories, advocating for a remembrance and repair. What does repair look like? Historical victories and student advocacy, and where we are now. Okay, who are the DeSLU? The Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved is a descendant-led 501c3 nonprofit organization formed to honor and preserve the legacy and heritage of our Jesuit SLU enslaved ancestors who built and sustained St. Louis University and other Jesuit-run churches, schools, and farms throughout the Missouri region from 1823 to 1865. So so in 2019, I was living in DC, and I received a letter in the mail from St. Louis University and the Society of Jesus, which is a Catholic order of priests. They have formed a research team. They've joined in 2016, and they began to do research to study their ties to slavery. And so for 3 years, they did the research, and they began to find names of enslaved people in their records. The Jesuits, being Catholic priests, they kept immaculate records. So from those names, they found our ancestors, our direct ancestors. Our great-great-grandparents were enslaved at St. Louis University. So in the letter, they let us know that they found these archives, and they would like to share the history of what they found in the archives. So that's me telling how we came to be. Finding the letters, being contacted by St. Louis University and the Jesuits. And we, at that time, it was around 2020, I wasn't living here yet, but my elders were, and they began to bring our family members into SLU. They had workshops, and they began to share the history of our ancestors with them. These are some of our family members, some of the descendants. It's over 200 local family members here, and we have a few in other cities, Texas and in Florida. Oh, sorry. Wait. Oh, there it go. Okay, what the research revealed. So St. Louis University, like I said, they had researchers, and what the research revealed that St. Louis University, the Jesuits have been involved in global systems of slavery since their founding in 1543. And so when they first came to the colonies in Maryland, they built Georgetown as the first Jesuit institution. And then research revealed about our family in 1823, 5 of our ancestors were forced from a Maryland plantation after they helped to build Georgetown University, and they wanted to bring enslaved people here to St. Louis to help build the first Jesuit institution west of the Mississippi River, which is St. Louis University. At that time, they was a small university, well, in a little schoolyard. They had a schoolhouse, but then in 1823, when our ancestors came, they began to build the larger institution. In 1829, another 26 of our ancestors, some children, they were forced from White Marsh Plantation in Maryland to St. Louis, and they built the first Jesuit mission in Florissant. I don't know if any you guys have seen the Rock Building, or it's a building that's still standing to this day. Our ancestors, Augustus Queen and Proteus and Billy Queen, they actually helped build that institution, and it's still standing today. Okay, so some of these are pictures of our ancestors. That picture is of our Peter Hawkins, who, after the first 5 enslaved couples came here in 1823, the first couple had a son, which is Peter Hawkins. He was the first one actually born here in 1824 after their 1,000-mile trek from Maryland to Missouri. And he was actually the last to he died enslaved by the Jesuits. So this is an actual picture of Peter Hawkins in 1907. Even though he was emancipated in 1865, he had to stay on he stayed on because the Jesuit did what a lot of enslavers did after emancipation. They said that they owed them. So since he purchased his wife for $500 at that time, they had to work. He had to stay on and work until his death, even after emancipation, because they said they owed him for purchasing her freedom. And that is actually a map of the first Jesuit mission out here that's in Florissant, and that was a map of their mission. And that's the building right there, the white building right there is the building that's still standing out on Howder Shell Road in Florissant, Missouri, that our ancestors built. And, okay, let me move this a little bit. All right, and this is so this right here is an actual list of the enslaved people that Durberg and Verhagen, who was the first SLU president, they were doing an accounting of how many enslaved people they had in 1831. I think that's on that ledger. And at that time, these are the names of my actual ancestors, each and every one of them. And in 1831, this is how many they had on the campus of St. Louis University, enslaved people. And that's an actual map of St. Louis University in 1836. And the arrow, the red arrow right there, is their cabin, which was the enslaved people's cabin. Okay, this right here is the old St. Francis Xavier College Church. You know, the big St. Francis that's right adjacent to SLU right now. This is the church when they were turning it down, but where that circle is actually where the union that they allowed our great-grandparents 3 times removed to come together and get married. And they got married up in that upper, that's called the Upper Colored Chapel. And I'm gonna read, this is an actual archive that's housed in the Archdiocese right now of our ancestors' marriage. And it says, it was June 28, 1860. I have this day united in the holy bonds of matrimony, Charles Chauvin, a slave of Mrs. Curtis, who was a fur trader's wife, very affluent couple, and Henrietta Mills, a slave of St. Louis University. And then it had the witnesses, which were family members. And yes, so this is the actual, where the actual archive, and it's a wonderful thing to actually see a record of the union that came together. They actually went on to have 10 children. The first 3 were born into slavery at St. Louis University. Actually, Henrietta Mills, our great-great-grandmother, when I talked about, she was born in 1844 at St. Louis University. And those who came in 1823, which were her grandparents and her mother, her grandfather was about 50, and her mother was 10 years old when they came from Maryland. So this is a generational thing. So and she was born in 1844. And she had 6 siblings. So total, it was about 70 of our enslaved ancestors trafficked throughout the Missouri region. Okay, and this right here is, she is to have her freedom if she paid $300 to be appropriated to St. Francis Xavier College Church. So like Brother Boyd talked about, at that time, they did allow you to purchase your freedom. Can you understand that? That's your birthright, but you gotta purchase it from someone else. That, you know, that blows my mind, but that's how it was. So this is an actual archive of Henrietta's aunt, Matilda Tyler. She was one of those who actually who paid for her freedom. So her husband, when she came here, she was 15 years old. So in 1847, she had 6 children. The first 2 had died. You know, a lot of our enslaved children often died in birth or in early years because of the stress of being enslaved and things like that. But those of us who didn't make it, that's why we all here, we're a miracle to be here today, and we need to pay homage to our ancestors, because I can't imagine any other race of people who can get through what they had to go through. So we need to definitely be, understand, and that's why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, because I understand how much it is a blessing for us to be here, because from looking in them archives, we've been through hell, okay? I'm just gonna tell you. So this is a ledger for our aunt Matilda Tyler. She worked 10 years at SLU during the day, and then she rented herself out at night and anytime she could, and this is a ledger of her $50 that she would pay to the Jesuits for her son, her freedom, and her children's freedom. So from 1847 to 1857, for 10 years, they have an accounting, and she paid them $900, which is equivalent to like $19,000 or something like that today. And I have the actual redacted minutes from the board of directors from St. Louis University in 1859, when they allowed them to get their bonds paper and their manumission papers, and they were freed. So she did free her and her 4 boys along with her husband by working. And that is the type of hard work and tenacity that we had. And to go with what Brother Boyd was talking about, the affluent affluent communities, they did go on, because she was able to help her and her children early on to be free before emancipation. They went on to live in the Ville. Her sons were all musicians, and one of the sons helped, he started the first black baseball team along with Bridgewater, called the St. Louis Black Stockings. and they went around the country, and they were one of the most successful baseball teams. And they opened a salon too in the Ville, which I saw all that, it was a wonderful thing. So it was some success stories. Okay, so, and this is the current St. Francis. So the money that she paid to the Jesuits, they appropriated that money to build this new St. Francis Xavier College Church that's still standing today. Okay, reclaiming narratives by telling our stories. So bringing it back up to the descendants of the St. Louis University enslaved and our organization. So we decided to, once we found out about this history, and we also understand the unique position that we're in, because a lot of us sitting here today, we come from enslaved people who were enslaved, but a lot of us don't know like we know. And so when we found this out, I decided that it's important because we want to take you guys on a journey with us. Even though you might not find where your ancestors were, you can kind of get an idea what they went through our journey. That's number one. And we wanted to inspire you to go back, talk to the elders in your family, the oldest people in your family. Sit them down and ask them, do they know who their great-grandparents are? See, my grandmother, rest in peace, she used to tell me about certain people in her family. She's a Chauvin. And she used to say, you know, you running around here humming and singing and all that. You know you got that from my uncle, and you like that jazz music and things like that. This is a positive story, since I'm going to tell y'all a little positive story. So, and she said, go look in the encyclopedia. So I would go look in the encyclopedia, and then I saw our uncle, Louis Chauvin. He is a famous ragtime musician. He played with Scott Joplin. So she had 10 kids. Remember I said she had 10 children? Where he was the last one, born in 1884. And he was like a genius. He played in the World's Fair. He won a gold medal playing piano, ragtime music in the World's Fair. And when Scott Joplin met Louis, he began to compose. So they had a composition that would have been like a hit record today called the Heliotrope Bouquet. And he's in the Scott Joplin Museum and everything. Do y'all remember that movie, Scott Joplin with Billy D. Williams? Y'all remember that? Some of us older probably remember. Right. Clifton Davis, he played our uncle, Louis Chauvin. And I actually met him, and when I told him who I was, and I thanked him for bringing our ancestor, Louis's genius to life, he was just so excited to actually meet a descendant of somebody that he played in a movie. So that's just a side little note like that, little history. So this is us. We are educating the public, what I'm doing now, to try to make sure that these stories aren't erased. You know, they try to say now in the history books and some of the school books, they call us workers and everything, and not admitting that we are actually enslaved. So that is part of our mission, to educate the public, but that's not all that we're doing. Okay, and I don't know if you've heard of any of our articles in the St. Louis American, PBS. We have a PBS Juneteenth special. We went viral last year, last January this time. We did a teach-in at the campus of St. Louis University because we are advocating for repair. We're advocating for reparations for the intergenerational, multi-dimensional harm and devastation that has been done to our family. And we think that it is important. So we have been engaging with St. Louis University, and it has actually been, we've had progress because of the being in the newspaper, advocating, educating the community to support us. So it has resulted in some engagement with St. Louis University. How much time I got? Oh, okay, okay. So, and we are fighting for reparations, and people always think that reparations is about only compensation, which it is, but there are 5 types of reparations, and I don't know if anybody, do you know the 5 types of reparations? So here they are real quick. Satisfaction. Satisfaction is, and this is coming from the international framework of the international, what is it? You know it, Millibor, you don't know it? Okay, I had to go back and where it come from, but it's international from the Geneva Convention and things like that, what reparations is. And satisfaction is like a memorial, a formal apology, things like that. Restitution is also bringing the harm back to what they were before. Compensation, of course, is monetary funds, things like that. Rehabilitation, mental health rehabilitation, things like that. And cessation, guarantees of non-repeat, ensuring that this won't happen again. Those are the 5 types of reparations, and we are requesting all 5 levels of reparations from St. Louis University and the Society of Jesus. Okay, and few historical victories. So last year we galvanized the Student Government Association of St. Louis University, and we did what I'm doing now, educating them, helping them to understand what has the history of their institution, and they agreed that they want to stand in solidarity with the descendants of the St. Louis University enslaved, and so they came together and they voted unanimously to pass Resolution 00724 in solidarity with the descendants. Send it to the Board of Trustees and St. Louis University, saying that they want a monument on the campus and they want them to adhere to our 10-point reparations plan that we have submitted to them. We also, here you go. So that's historical, and that goes in the record. So we're very proud of that. Actually, the students have spearheaded, and I'm gonna invite all you guys to come out because it's for the community for Black History Month on February 27th. They're doing the first inaugural candlelight vigil for the ancestors of St. Louis University to honor them. We're doing a program, and then we're gonna do a candlelight vigil on the campus at the Clock Tower. So I'm gonna invite all of you to come and celebrate, because this is for our family, but this is for all of us. We really realize that we are in a unique position, and because we have the receipts, it's important that we tell this story, and it's important that we make these institutions accountable. It's one thing to say I'm sorry or give an apology, which we are planning. This is just a copy of the resolution from the students that they signed on our behalf. And this is, we are meeting right now and engaging with St. Louis University. We have for a year now. And they are planning, we are together. We just convened yesterday the formal apology meeting working group. They are going to give the descendants a private apology on March 25th and a public apology on March 26th. That's coming up, and we just convened to plan that. Yeah, that's huge and everything, but we also submitted to them a 10-point plan. And on that 10-point plan, it is the formal apology. That's why they're doing that first. We are asking for cash payments, a memorial monument, and we are asking for an institute, a research center on the campus, so students, the public, everybody can come where this history is housed. We're asking for a community. We haven't forgot about our community. We're asking for community investment projects that we want to partner with the city of St. Louis, and scholarships, a host of other. We have 10-point plan patterned after National African American Reparations Commission. I am a subject matter expert, an award-winning reparations scholar. I just got over 100. Well, I shouldn't tell y'all all my business, but I just got over $100,000 grant from Decolonizing Wealth to help with our advocacy, and we're so proud of that because that is a validation to us that when people want to pour into you, that they believe in the work that you're doing. So I really, really appreciate that. And so, yeah, so that's where we are now. So to bring it all in is we are here just trying to make this institution accountable for our ancestors, to acknowledge their contributions and what has happened after that. Mill Creek, you know, everything that has the systemic racism that continues to happen, we want to have some kind of show of our contributions. So I hope that it's good. Thank you. It's a lot to remember all them numbers, I'm telling you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Anyone hungry? Well, first of all, let's give it up for Robin once again, her sharing her family history. We're going to hold questions to the panel conversation, but at this time, I'm going to ask our reps from the Black rep to come on up. And in the meantime, before you all start, I'm going to ask Manal Bey, my committee member for the education program, to come up. Again, you see the artists behind us, Tyler Harris and Stacia Curry, but Manal is going to show a little bit about what they're doing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. As Brian stated, my name is Manal Bey. I am also a co-chair with the Education Committee subcommittee for this program, and it has been a phenomenal process just working with everyone who is a part of this, because I think we all share that same belief that the community deserves to heal, the community deserves good things, and the community deserves the opportunity to help itself. And so we're doing that with this sharing of history, and we also get to do something unique, which is invite artists, local artists, to be a part of the storytelling experience, because we know that it's not just about the oral tradition culturally, but it's also about the creativity and the artistry that comes with it. And so it's the history that gets told both through words and expression and creativity through art and drama. And so we're going to see that display today with St. Louis Artworks behind us, who've been working so diligently. It's been so wonderful just being able to watch them work, right? The calm and the peace as they create, it's been wonderful. And then we also get to share that experience with the Black rep actors and actresses that's here with us today. So we are going to allow them to go forth with their presentation, and then we will have the reveal of the artwork that's been done behind us. We will also auction off that artwork today, so you have the opportunity to not just experience the work as it's being done, but also take it home, y'all, and look at it on your wall and remember this day. And everything that you donate in that auction goes directly to the artist. This is not about us, it's about them, and it's about us supporting one another. So we're here to do that. Thank you.
St. Louis, such a colored town. A whiskey black space of history and neighborhood. Forever ours to Lawrenceville, where the only road open to me was cleared by colonial slaves, whose children never moved, never seems to mend the torments of the Depression, or the stains of demented spittle dropped from the lips of crystal women still making independence flags. St. Louis, on a Halloween's Eve, to the veiled prophet, usurping the mystery of Mardi Gras. I made it mine, though. The queen was always fair. Unlike the lonely ones for liberal trick-or-treaters, back to my front door, bag half empty, my face enough to scare anybody I passed. Gee, a colored kid, what a gas.
Here, a tree
Wandering the horizon, dipped in blues, untended bones, used to hugs draws rhythm and decency. Here, a tree, waiting to be hanged.
Sumner High School.
Squatting pale on the corner, like our vision was to be vague. Our memory of the war, that makes us free, to be forgotten, becoming paler. Linear movement from Sioux Carolina to Missouri. Freedmen landing in Jackie Wilson's Yelp. Daughters of the man you mitted, swimming in Tina Turner's grinds. This is Chuck Berry's town, disavowing miscegenation in any situation. And they let us be. Electric blues and Bo Diddleys, rockin' pneumonia and boogie woogie flu. The slop? Yeah, somebody know what I'm talking about. And short fried heads, running always to the River Chambersburg, Little Italy. I passed every day at the sweet shops and was afraid. The cops raided truants regularly. And after dark, I would not be seen with any other colors, sane and loving my life. Behind the truck, 5 hands clasping chains. Round the trees, 4 more suckling steel. This is the borderline, a territorial dispute. Cars loaded with families, fellas from the factory. 1 or 2 practical nurses become our trenches. Some dig into cement with elbows under engines. Do not be seen in your hometown after sunset. We suck up our shadows. We will stand here. Our shoulders embrace an enormous spirit. Run round to Miss Bertha's where Little Richard gets his process. Run backward to the rose bushes and a drunk man lying down where there's nuns in a pink habits praying in a pink chapel. My dreams run to meet Aunt Marie. My dreams haunt me like the little Geechee River. Our dreams draw blood from old stones. This is our space. We are not moving.
Ayo, Frankie.
Yeah?
Ayo, Frankie.
Yeah?
Listen up, let me share a tale about Frankie Muse Freeman. Her story prevails, a civil rights icon, a hero of our time. Fighting for equality, she truly did shine. Born in 1916, Virginia's ground, she rose to challenge the system around. A lawyer, an activist with heart full of fire. She took on segregation, she never did tire.
Yeah.
Hey, St. Louis, Missouri, she made her mark. Fought against discrimination, no walk in the park. Housing, education, she covered it all. A true champion, she's still standing tall. First woman to serve on the U.S. Commission. The USCCR had a vision, a milestone achieved. She used a hefty might. She's strong like the armor, called her a Black Knight.
Yeah.
Now let's switch it up and let the truth be told by the dark history that's yet to unfold. St. Louis University, a story untold. Enslaved people's labor built the legacy code. The priests owned slaves, a painful fact. Forced labor, no pay, their rights not intact. From 1823 to 1865, they toiled on the land, built a university grand. Descendants of the enslaved, we honor your name. A legacy, oppression that's hard to reclaim. Seeking justice, reparations, and recognition too for the legacy of slavery that still affects you. SOU's wealth built on their backs, a heavy weight. A legacy, oppression that's hard to abate. But now descendants rise with voices clear, demanding justice and to interfere. Descendants of the enslaved, we honor your name. Your ancestors' struggle will forever proclaim, seeking justice, reparations, and recognition too for the legacy of slavery that still affects you. So, let's give it up for the enslaved and their might. Their descendants' resilience shine with new light. May their struggles and triumphs forever be told, and may justice and equality forever unfold.
Well, I got a problem. I got
got
lots
lots
of
of
problems. But I got one I want you to fix. And if you can fix it, I'll do anything you say. Last spring, this man from the Midwest asked for President Carter to say he was sorry for that forgettable phenomenon, slavery.
Which brought us all together. And I never did get it. None of us never got no apology from no white folks about not being considered human beings.
That makes me mad and tired. Someone told me Roots was the way white folks worked out their guilt. The success of Roots is the way white folks assuaged their consciences. I don't know this. This is what I was told.
I don't get any pleasure from nobody watching me trying to be a slave I once was, who got away when we all know they had an Emancipation Proclamation, that the Civil War was not fight over us. We all know that we actually don't exist unless we play football or basketball or baseball or soccer.
Pele. See, they still import a strong one to make money. Art here isn't like in the old country where we had some spare time and did what we liked to do. I don't know this either. This is also something I was told. I just want to find out why no one has been able to sound a gong and all the reporters recite that the gong is ringing while we watch all the white people,
Immigrants and invaders,
conquistadors and relatives of London debtors from Georgia.
kneel and apologize to us just for 3 or 4 minutes.
Now, this is not impossible. And someone should make a day where a few minutes of the pain of our lives is acknowledged.
I have never been very interested in what white people did because I was able, like most of us, to have very little to do with them. But if I become a success, that means I have to talk to white folks more than in high school. I mean, they are everywhere. You know how they talk about a neighborhood changing? We suddenly become all over the place. They are now all over my life, and I don't like it.
I'm not talking about poets and painters. I'm not talking about women and lovers of beauty. I'm talking about that proverbial white person who is usually a man, who just turns you around, looks at your teeth, who feels your calves and back, and agrees on a price. We are, you see, now able to sell ourselves.
And I am still a person who is tired, a person who is not into his demise. Just 3 or 4 minutes for our lives. Just 3 or 4 minutes of silence and a gong.
In St. Louis, Oakland, in Los Angeles.
People keep telling me to put my feet on the ground. I get mad and scream,
There is no ground.
Only pieces from dogs, horses, and men who don't live anywhere. They tell me to think straight and make myself something. I shout inside, I am a poet.
I write poems.
I make words cartwheel and somersault down pages. Out of my mouth come vision distilled like bootleg whiskey. I am like a radio, but I am a channel of my own. I keep saying I write poems, and people keep asking me, what do I do? What in the world is going on? People keep telling me these are hard times. What are you going to be doing 10 years from now?
What in the world do you think?
I am going to be writing poems. I will have poems inching up the walls of the Lincoln Tunnel. I am going to feed my children poems on rye bread with horseradish. I'm going to send my mailman off with a poet for his wagon, give my doctor a poem for his heart. I am a poet. I am not a part-time poet.
No.
I am not an amateur poet. I don't even know who that person could be. Whoever that is authorizing poetry as an avocation is a fraud.
Put your own feet on the ground.
So we have Brian McKinley and Deja Jones. All right, we are 10 minutes till 1. A couple of housekeeping notes. We do have a great lunch, as I mentioned to you before. We do hope that you will stay for the panel conversation because that is your time to engage in what you heard previously. But also, before we break, I do want to acknowledge one of the panelists who didn't present, but he will serve on the panel, and he was referenced already by Brother Boyd, and that is Dr. John Wright. If you can stand, Brother Wright. If you don't know this gentleman, you will get to know him. But when you think about Black St. Louis history in the book that can be shared, just Google the name. You can find over 12 books written by this gentleman on so many things about Black St. Louis. So if you need somewhere to begin, he will be the one that I would begin with in terms of my climb of gaining more knowledge that we shared earlier about the scale. Very knowledgeable, moderately knowledgeable, not knowledgeable at all. So with that being said, we're going to break. We were a little bit behind schedule, but we're going to end on time at 3 o'clock, but we're going to take some time to enjoy lunch. Let's say we reconvene at 1:40, give you a chance to unwind. We hope that you will stay, enjoy the lunch. Like I said, the music was even curated, so we hope that you will enjoy the music. And I think that's about everything we need right now. Brother Perkins, is anything you want to share?
Just directions. Out the center door to the left and down the center.
All right. Everybody okay with that? All right. Thank you very much.